This week's episode is about faith, leadership, and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Our guest this week is Matt Benson, a young CEO and the creator of Redemption, a documentary about the 2024 Buckeyes and their championship run. And this isn't just highlights and touchdowns. We get into what it takes to lead under pressure, how faith shows up when the stakes are real, and how you turn a season like that into a story that actually means something. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about winning. It's about who you become when the pressure hits. And as always, you can do your part by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. It helps us grow and keeps this thing going. Hello and welcome to the Two Dads Podcast, episode number 49. I'm your host, OG Pickle. To my left, Slick Willie. And to my other left, Matthew Benson. How you guys doing? Slick Willie, I'll start with you. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, how are you, buddy? Doing well. Another good week. Out here, episode 49. I know we were talking about this before. We don't do too much prep for this. 49, the only guy I could think of, Tremaine Edmonds, is with the Bills, linebacker. Was about the only guy I could think of. Racked my brain. It's an odd number. I'm ready for next week for 50, but Matt, you got anybody that you know that ever wore the number 49, even if you did in JV football maybe?
I didn't even know they made that number. I can't think of a single.
It's got to be a lineman. I mean, we're getting to lineman numbers, dude. This isn't slick wide receivers. It's not guys who put up stats every week that you're like, oh, that checks out. I think Tim Wakefield was 49.
I think he was 48, but he might be 49. That's a good guess.
I think it's a good guess. If it's not, I'll give myself the sad trombone for trying, but no. What's up with you, Matt? It's good to see you. So for those that don't know, Matt was my former boss at eFuse. We talked about it a little bit in the past. I had worked as a salesman for Matt, under Matt, and I sold sort of video game tournaments. Matt runs an esports production company. He'll talk a little bit about that. But I sold the concepts to these companies and had worked for some big brands like Kroger and Oxxo. And if you guys know your Mexican culture, probably not. We do have one of the Delgados from La Carreta coming on, so I'll ask him about Oxxo in a few weeks. But
is he bringing any chips and salsa?
Okay. So real quick before we get to Matt, he did agree. It's really cool. I'm excited to talk to him, Matt. These guys are local Mexican restaurants, but they have 5 now. So they've been scaling. They've been doing a good job and really taking restaurant businesses to the next level, which is extremely hard. He goes, "Can I bring anything?" And I go, "Margaritas." And he goes, "Are you serious?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Perfect." So I guess we're going to have some margaritas coming on the show. But speaking of sweetness, how you doing, Matt? Like, what's up with you? What's going on in your world right now?
I'll definitely be tuned into that one. That one could keep it together. Let's keep it not sloppy, But I'm doing well, man. It's good to see you. It's been too long since I've seen you in person, but excited to get the band back together for this.
This is very fun. For those that don't know, actually, and I'll tell you this, Bill, because you probably don't know this, eFuse, and we'll jump into the specifics of the company coming up, but eFuse actually was one of the companies, pretty much the only one, that worked in a back room in the warehouse. So when I was doing merch with Brandon, he was on episode 21. Brandon Fuschita came on. He talked about Logan Paul and Mr. Beast and doing the merch machine. Matt was a young, ambitious guy. I say young, but we're relatively in age. But he came in and he was like, "Hey, I need a space. I want to build this company called eFuse." And Brandon's always had an eye for some of these things. It's like, okay, this guy has talent. Let's see what he's got. And he actually rented a little, like, would you say it was a closet, Matt?
I don't even know if you could call it that, to be honest. I mean, no windows. But yeah, I guess a closet does it justice.
It had an emergency door and no windows. I definitely remember that. And there was how many guys were back in that room, by the way?
More than it should have been. There was some stench. Yeah. During the lunch break, we'd go play basketball out in the warehouse and come back in all sweaty and nasty.
That's so funny you say that, because Brandon did have a full basketball court in our warehouse. I mean, he
checks out.
He installed wood, and they were 2 legitimate hoops. And obviously Matt and his family are big sports people, and we would go out there. We would literally play intense, like 4-on-4 basketball. Hard. He's right. And we would come back to that room because I was doing a little bit of marketing with them too. And oh my gosh, to say it stank is an understatement. I think some guys smelled worse than others, but man, we didn't have showers and stuff there. So it was just a stinky small closet. But
it was great
for
to see you, buddy. Team chemistry for a while. It helped us build the culture.
There's nothing quite like smelling your neighbors at the desk to build that culture. If you can get through that, I think team building exercise, Bill Ray. I think that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, we got our storage closet in the garage here. If you want to go set up a desk
size.
in there,
It's about the size of where you would get. You know, when the lights go out and you got to go find the breaker.
Yeah,
it's basically a room that just houses a breaker. So that is what it is. So
I respect the hustle. So kudos. Everything starts from somewhere.
You know, I've got a question for you as we kind of kick this off. Like, you've always been someone who's like a SaaS product guy. Like, you're definitely an innovator, and you definitely are thoughtful about the businesses that you've run. Right off the rip, I know, as we're just kind of doing this roundtable, like, how did you get into a documentary? I still am fascinated about that, and I'll get into your background here in just a bit. But how a documentary? I've sort of teased it online. How did you get into that?
Yeah, dude. So my wife and I are both Christians. We go to church up here in Columbus at a place called One Church, and neither of us are filmmakers in any nature. And during one of our church services, and this was like July of 24, G. Scott, who is the starting tight end for Ohio State in the 2024 season, actually came and preached at our church. And he did this like unbelievable message, shared his testimony, and we came home after church and we were just like, man, that was so powerful. He's talking about the locker room, how these guys were getting baptized, just their personal testimonies, how crazy they were. And we had been watching, just like I'm sure other folks, like all the documentaries on Netflix, like the Swamp Kings, the Last Dances, etc. And my wife actually had the idea. She was like, man, it'd be so cool to watch a documentary, but following this year's football team. They're supposed to be really good. They seem like they've got crazy, cool personal stories. And I just couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, man, that is such a cool idea. I played basketball. Going back to basketball, I play at a rec league here in Columbus. And one of the guys I play with is a filmmaker. And so I brought the idea up to him and was like, hey, what would it take for us to pull this thing together? And long story short, in like a 2-week period, we pulled all the resources together and started following the 2024 Buckeye team prior to the start of the season. So this was like August of 24. Ended up following them through that whole crazy ups and down of a season, losing to Michigan, going on this crazy hard playoff run, losing to Oregon along the way, and captured the whole thing, and then looked up at the end of it, and we had this great film, and then ultimately got it distributed to Amazon.
Did your resources at eFuse help you at all? Like, when you were going through this, did the resources that eFuse and the connections you have in gaming sort of help that?
Yeah, as you know, Mitch, like do we call you Pickle on this podcast? Is that name?
Yeah, they call me Pickle on here. Yeah.
Making sure it's stuck. But yeah, so you know, like a lot of what we do, we work with like athletes, we work with streamers, like creators, and so to do this, we had to work with athletes. We worked with some creators. We worked with the distributors and Netflix, and Amazon, etc. Just like negotiating those deals, and so there was a lot of connective tissue. It was very different. Like you're building a different piece of creative versus building a business, but there were a lot of similarities, and the relational equity kind of translated pretty nicely.
That's fantastic. That's crazy. I mean, the gamers, they're always trying to be like in gaming. That's what I noticed when we were at eFuse. Like all these successful athletes are sort of pivoting that way to be gamers. So I find that fascinating that maybe it's kind of crazy how that all worked though. You had a filmmaker next to you, you have access to the athletes, and then the turnaround time of somebody being passionate about it.
Yeah. What does it look like though for you? I mean, I guess I've never done a deal that big or anything, and I work in real estate just as an FYI to you, but to pitch that to Netflix and, you know, Amazon and things like that. Were you in those boardrooms? Were you talking with those guys trying to pitch yourself, or was this more the filmmaker that you kind of partnered with to kind of do this?
Yeah, what's crazy, and it kind of there's similarities between this and eFuse in the sense that when I started it, like you're super ignorant, you don't know what you're getting into, and so in a way, you'd probably do things that looking back, like I probably would have done it differently, but you just didn't know any other way. So when I started with eFuse, my first investor was Braxton Miller, and I got connected to him through a cold LinkedIn DM. And it was just like, hey, man, like I have this cool gaming idea. I'd love for you to be an investor. That's how we got connected, and we become good friends. He's an investor. And then similarly with this, like I actually just like cold emailed. I looked up a bunch of people on LinkedIn, all these different platforms, and then I was the one that emailed him and did the entire deal. In retrospect, I probably would have hired an agent to like go out and help us market it and sell it, but it ended up working out, and I learned a lot along the way. But part of it's just like shooting the shot. Got a lot of no's. I mean, I probably sent 200 emails on the distribution side and got 10 back, but we found the place. So that's all that matters.
Who said no? Can you share with some that were like, yeah, I don't have time for this? Or is like, I guess maybe not the specific people, but how many no's did you get?
A lot of no's. I hit up everybody from, think of all the streaming platforms. Think of, HBO, Hulu, Disney, Netflix. I'll share with you Netflix because I thought it was interesting. They were actually Netflix. I'll give them credit. Some people just don't even respond, but Netflix hit me back and they were basically like, hey, our focus is we're trying to purchase films and series that are sport wide. We're not, unless they're the Cowboys, for example, where it's like a massive brand, we're not trying to buy films that are really narrowed into one team. We want to do like league wide series. And so if you look at their inventory right now, it's like, it's NASCAR, it's NBA, it's quarterback, it's all of these like league wide viewpoints. And so they turned us down and they said it was specifically because of the, it was focused on one team versus being league wide, which I thought was interesting. And I actually appreciated them being upfront about it.
I think that makes sense a little bit, right? League wide, you get a bigger conglomerate of people that are probably interested in it, as opposed to narrowing your search to Ohio State. But also, like, I feel like there's some brands out there like Ohio State that have enough clout and or enough hate, right? There's teams out there where will probably watch us because they don't like Ohio State, right? Just because they're interested in their story. But it also checks that box of like faith and religion as well, right? So I think there's a lot of things that tie into it. So. Obviously, I've seen it on Prime, so cool that you landed with that. And it was kind of weird when Mitch said that. I'm like, actually, I've seen that scrolling through Amazon when he first brought you up. So pretty cool to see you join us today and bring that to light. So again, thanks for coming on for us today.
Yeah, of course. So it was a really cool thing, and we learned a lot along the way. And it's kind of like sparked my curiosity. I know, Pickle, you're kind of the same way. You dabble in a lot of different things, and I feel like it re-energized me on the eFuse side too, which has been fun.
I like that re-energy too. I just spoke at a local school today, actually, and I talked to them about kind of the opposite of what you just did, but sometimes I talk to them about how it can be a pivot versus what I really told them today was, hey, specialize at one thing. One of the things that I've done habitually and has led to not so good is I've spread myself too thin doing too many things. Bill actually just doubled down on his work. He left everything pretty much except the podcast to then focus on being excellent at one thing. I think what you're doing embodies being exceptional at eFuse and stuff. And then now you've gone to the second, whereas the advice I gave today was like, hey, make sure it brings you joy, make sure you're having fun with it, but be good at really one thing. And that's definitely something that I heard as we've gone through this podcast, as we've had good guests on here, and as I've tried to grow and mature myself. It's like, don't focus on all these shiny objects, but be good at one thing. Does that come into play a little bit as you jump into a documentary? Were you thinking about that? Like, hey, am I going to kind of lose a little bit of focus on eFuse if I take this next year or several months to build this podcast?
Totally. I think there was this constant wrestle of like, am I taking away from what I'm doing at eFuse by doing this? And over time, I realized that, and I do think, by the way, I'll caveat and say that I do think there's a world where you can do too much and spread yourself too thin, and it does become a distraction. But for something like this, I actually found myself being more energized, and the relationships that I developed through it actually ended up being beneficial for eFuse. And I'll give you one example. So Tim Tebow's in the film. Tim Tebow, obviously, most people know from University of Florida days, Heisman winner, all the Tebowing, all of it, right? He's in there, and almost as like a commentary just of like how these Ohio State guys professing their faith is akin to what he was doing in the Florida days. But through that process, got to know Tim and his team, and they actually became partners in eFuse, and they've brought us a number of different deals. Tim's now on our board of directors, like just great relationship, really cool guy. But that would have never have happened, or probably wouldn't have happened had we not done the documentary. So I think there's a balance, right? And I think what's been cool about this too is it's adjacent. We just talked about how I'm still working with creators, athletes, platforms, and so I was able to take the same kind of ecosystem and apply it to a new industry, which has been really cool.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Do you have any other cool investors on eFuse? You said Braxton Miller, you name dropped Tim Tebow. Anybody else involved with your other business that's sort of overlapped here? Or?
I hate to be a name dropper, but I'll do it because you asked me. We do have some pretty dope folks that are a part of the cap table. On the football side, we've got Odell Beckham Jr., we've got Denzel Ward, we've got Zeke Elliott. On On the basketball side, we've got Seth Curry, D'Angelo Russell, Evan Turner. For the Michigan folks, Chase Winovich, old linebacker from Michigan days. So yeah, we got some great folks who are part of the cap table. We even have I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Frank Walker? He's a DJ. He's one of
I can
Mitch's,
barely
or,
remember
not Mitch,
episode
Neil.
49 or what we talked about on 48. Who are we talking about?
He's a DJ. He like travels across the globe, but he's an investor as well. So Frank Walker, you have to go check him out. But yeah, we got a really cool cap table.
I love that. Well, speaking of bringing a lot of people together, I've got a fun one for you, Matt. Bill, are you ready for this one? This is a new segment that we implemented just last week called
I got a lot of problems with you people.
Community Mailbag.
This is Community Mailbag. You guys asked questions, sent DMs, and asked us questionable things to send Matt Benson's way. So here he is, and hopefully he's willing. Matt, are you ready for community questions? Are you interested in the community mailbag?
I would love to participate.
Excellent. Last week we had one about lasagna. By the way, our friend Rob Ruenti sent one, and I asked the commissioner of the Midwest Athletic Conference, if you take two lasagnas and you stack them on top of each other, do you have one big lasagna or two lasagnas? So we've got a lot of fun questions ahead, and I will jump right into it for you, Mr. Benson. Thank you for playing community mailbag with us right here, right now. First question comes from Mr. Batanti. He is out in Virginia. He listens to the show from Virginia. He says, were there any little secrets you were not able to include on the doc that you found out while making the doc? Anything that's non-proprietary? Is there anything you learned during making the doc that you couldn't include?
There were some hot takes from players about the Rose Bowl. I'll leave it at that. Some crazy comments on that one. There were some pretty crazy, so I'll give you one. I don't know if you guys remember the fall kickoff event where the guys were baptizing kids on campus. It was like 1,000 people that got baptized, pretty crazy event. But what's even crazier is 20 years prior, Jim Trussell and a number of their players had a similar event at St. John's Arena. It's something that we just didn't have the time to include in the film, but there were so many overlaps between what happened 20 years ago compared to what was happening this year. Really cool, just kind of synergies, and it was cool to see, but couldn't make it into the film.
Connor Albers, local here, he's a trading card collector. He said, would you rather have the first Caleb Downs 1-of-1 in the Alabama uniform or the first Cardell Tate 1-of-1 trading card signed? Any one of those, would you rather have Tate or Downs?
I think Tate's got more upside. That might be a flagrant statement, but I'm going to take Tate.
I think I agree just because, wide receivers are probably going to hold more value than a safety is, right? Like, if you're looking at value, I think that's a good call. I like that.
What's one, Amber Evers writes, she's from town, what's one behind-the-scenes habit you notice that help people perform at a high level without burning out?
The best of the best, I think, honor the Sabbath. They take that day off. They put their phone away. They're not on social media all the time.
It's a great answer. Reiner writes, he was on the podcast. You remember Reiner from Lamo and all that back in the day, don't you, Matt? Yeah, Reiner was in the mix on the air. He writes, if aliens watched your documentary, would they think humans only can speak three letters, OSU, or that the earth worships a nut?
OSU.
We speak three letters. I love it. Patrick Klein writes, he was a part of eFuse. He wrote in here, how has entrepreneurship changed from what you thought it was in college to starting a company, to having a kid, to now making a successful docuseries? What changed from imagination to reality for you?
It's a lot harder than I thought I was going to be on every front. It ended up taking a lot longer and being a lot harder. But you begin to trust. Like, you might not be able to see the days in front of you in some ways. Like, whether it's having a kid, you're like, man, how am I going to work the next day with no sleep? Or it's, hey, with eFuse, like we're in a rough patch right now. I don't know how we're going to make it the next month. But there it ebbs and flows, and you have to have trust and just keep putting your best foot forward.
Nathan Laporte from Illinois writes, Ohio State has now lost 29 players to the transfer portal. Do you think your documentary caused this?
I sure hope not. Indiana, I don't know what they got going on, but I want to be a part of that. That might be the next one.
Daniel Joseph writes, how did you decide the subject direction for this project? You talked about it a little bit, but how did you narrow on the subject? Was it just that when you heard that sermon?
It was the sermon and then talking to the guys and just like, yeah, really getting to see up close and personal what transpired through the last season. It wrote the story for us. We didn't have to do much.
Kelly Walter writes, my 12-year-old has expressed interest in a career involving faith and sports, specifically football. What would you recommend for someone wanting a fulfilling career that incorporates faith?
That's a tough question. I feel like asking the Lord and taking the best next step and trusting that the rest will fall into place. Like I wouldn't have ever have guessed we'd be doing any of this stuff, but it was like, what am I interested in? What do I feel like the Lord's calling me to? And then taking the best next step and trusting his will in it.
Lauren Perrin writes, if you had to adopt a player as your son, who would it be? G. Scott Jr., Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, or Will Howard?
Dude, Travion Henderson is the ultimate guy. Like, they're all awesome, but Travion is like, he's just got this joy about him. Like, my wife even said when we left the room, he's like, he just radiates. He's like a teddy bear. You just want to squeeze. Like, I know he's a grown man, but like, he gives teddy bear vibes. And so, Travion Henderson.
Travion Henderson, the adoption. And that, my friend, is Community Mailbag. Thank you, Matt Benson, for answering these community questions. That was fun. We enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that too, my friend. A little bit of off the cuff. We didn't preface any of this, Bill, right? We didn't let him know anything. So this was a fun little experience.
I think that's the key to it, though. You don't really let people know. You know, we tell them maybe questions are coming, but we don't let them prepare so we get the real authentic answers. I think that's good. And one thing that reminded me in there, you talk about the 12-year-old entrepreneur in there wanting to talk. We actually have one thing that this podcast is prefaced off is supporting local businesses and small businesses and helping them with advice and bringing on other business owners, right? Kind of like yourself. So we had someone who listens to the podcast pretty consistently, Ryan Schuster out of Fort Laramie, which is down the road from us. His son, Boston, who is also 12 and he's in the 6th grade, got a 3D printer for Christmas. So what has he been doing? He started his own business called Boston's 3D Creations, and he's selling them on Facebook, so you guys can check them out. And he sent us these chains. He sent us like some demos, and I know, Josh, we can't put it too close to the camera here, but he can, it kind of spins like a 3D John Cena type WWE belt back from the date. So he's got these chains here. We got a St. Mary's one and a Salina one. He can do pretty much any school. Obviously, there's trademark infringements on some things, obviously, so caution. But obviously he can also do local businesses and things like that. So really cool to see that our podcast is touching, people of all ages and a 12-year-old who's one out there to hustle. He's already bought his second 3D printer, which is pretty cool. So he's trying to scale. So he sent us these. We will probably keep one for display, maybe for the podcast, and then maybe we'll give the other way away on Facebook or Instagram for you guys. Go check out his page. Like I said, it's Boston's 3D Creations on Facebook. Support the kid. And just shoot him a message if you can, if you're looking for anything, and he can pretty much do whatever you need. So kind of cool to be able to reach out there and keep continuing to impact people locally.
Well, tonight's guest is Matthew Benson, just to remind you, who is chatting with us today. He's an Ohio native, entrepreneur, and CEO of eFuse. Matt started in venture capital, went on to build a real company at scale in the esports and creator economy, and has taken on leadership pressure most people don't experience until later in life. On top of that, he's helped create Redemption, a documentary series that goes beyond football and into faith, brotherhood, identity, and what pressure does to people when the whole world is watching. This episode is for anyone balancing ambition and responsibility, and for anyone who's ever wondered how a story like this actually gets made. Matt Benson, welcome to the Two Dads podcast, my friend. If you haven't checked out the Salina Moose Lodge 1473, you're missing out. Because when you're a Moose member, it's more than just a place to hang out. It's a spot where you can walk in and instantly feel like you belong. Whether you're there for a big night like Moose Stock, a raffle, a live band, or just to catch up with good people. And the best part, every time you show up, you're supporting charity and community right here at home. So don't just be a visitor. Become a member today at the Salina Moose Lodge 1473 and come see what you've been missing out on.
All right, so great intro, Mitch. Pretty decorated there. He's always really good at introducing people and kind of giving their background there, though. So, but we have a lot of people from this area that probably don't know who you are. You and Pick will have a pretty good relationship, but for the people that are listening around here and that are meeting you for the first time, who are you, and how did you go from an Ohio kid to building real companies and becoming a CEO of eFuse?
Yeah, thanks again for having me, guys. And my quick backstory. I'm born and raised here in Ohio. I grew up in Chillicothe, so like an hour south of Columbus, smallish town. Paper mill is kind of our claim to fame. If you ever drive through, it's a little stinky. So that's how you know where we are. But I grew up always wanting to be an entrepreneur. I actually come from a family of attorneys, and they're very black and white, and I like to operate in the gray and do some more innovative things. And so I knew growing up that I wanted to build a business, but I didn't really know what that would look like. And you shared a story earlier about the 12-year-old. That was me. But back in the day, what I would do is I would go buy glow sticks, and then on the 4th of July, I'd hire like 20, 30 buddies to just go around the state and sell these glow sticks. We'd also go and record dance recitals, like burn the DVDs, edit them, and then sell them to the dance mom. So I love the hustle. I remember those days, and it's always kind of been in my DNA. But ended up deciding after graduating from high school that I wanted to go to Ohio University. I was really fortunate. I got a full ride offer to go there, and so I went to OU. And part of the reason I wanted to go there is they had this new entrepreneurship program. It was my class was going to be the first time that they actually had a major in entrepreneurship, and there was a guy there who was leading the center that was a multi-time founder who had exited multiple businesses. And honestly, I wanted to go learn from him and be under his wing. And so I went to OU, studied entrepreneurship and finance there, really enjoyed my time. Part of the College of Business at OU, though, which I think is really interesting, is they actually require you to take an entire semester off and build a business in an industry that they assign you. And so they actually assigned esports and gaming, and I ended up developing this 180-page report that became the initial blueprint for eFuse. And so I spent this entire semester doing it, and honestly, at least for me, you never think anything you're going to do in school like that is going to actually apply to the real world. So it was cool to go through that experience, develop this report, and at the end of it, I was ready to jump, but I was like, man, I really don't know what I'm doing still. Like, you're going to have to raise some money for this. I have no idea how to do that. And so I decided to go work at a venture capital firm, and I got connected through an alumni to the Ohio Innovation Fund, which is a $40 million investment fund based in Columbus, Ohio. And I got to work directly under Bill Baumel, who is a guy who spent 20 years in Silicon Valley working with the best of the best companies, all kinds of billion-dollar exits, just a really decorated venture capitalist, now here in Columbus. And so I worked for Bill for about a year and a half, and then after doing that, got to meet all these CEOs, got to see the different businesses, and kind of came to the conclusion that you never fully know what you're doing. You just kind of take the leap of faith and try to build the airplane as you're flying it. And so that's what I did. August of 2018, started eFuse, and then somewhere in that time frame got connected to Brandon and Mitch, and started working out of their warehouse, and the rest is history. And so now the business has grown to be multi-8 figures in revenue. At our height, we were 100 people in and around Columbus. It's just been a wild ride, and we've been really fortunate. And it's definitely not been all up and to the right. We've had ebbs and flows, highs and lows, but it's been a great experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I think that's my favorite thing he's going to say today. I think it's just honest. For me, being a part of that, that was the first look going from Brandon, and now Brandon had a little bit of a cushion. We had a Logan Paul who generated $33 million one year. So money was, in surplus in just revenue right off the bat. Like, yes, there was investments, and Brandon has his own story about not being able to afford that first buy of inventory and having to find David Hirsch, who does Justice out there. And there's a whole slew of that to get where he was. But I like that you said it's not always up, because I don't want to have that impression on the podcast when we bring these people on that talk about, oh yeah, I did the thing and this was the success and this was great. I don't want to get into some of the not so goods, but I do think it's refreshing to hear someone say that this isn't always good. It's not always easy. And it's just like the chicken truck. Like, our first year was kind of not as good as the second year. And then, you take some steps forward, you take some steps back, you take some swings and miss, you take some swings and hit. But I think that's a really cool way to put it, and that you keep an optimistic attitude regardless, and that leap of faith and that joy that it brings kind of keeps you moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's been weeks like earlier parts of the business where it was like next week, I don't know how we're going to make payroll. And there's also been times where it's like we've had viral moments on the internet and things are flowing and it seems like we can't miss. And so I think that that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. It's the highest highs and the lowest lows. And what I think my faith has meant to me is that it's the consistency. It's what's mellowed me out, because if you get too high, you can get an ego. And if you get too low, it can be crippling. You can be so anxious that you can't even do anything. And so trying to find that middle ground of comfort and peace, and that's been found in my faith, has been, I think, what's allowed me to continue on the journey. Because otherwise, it's hard to say you want to keep doing this when it gets so high or so low, And Pickle, you've been a part of this.
It's definitely a difficult process, even with the food truck. Like sometimes I look it in the face and I go, could I make 20% somewhere better with a lot less work? Yeah, maybe. But so you got to find passion. You got to find that faith. You got to find that middle ground. For those listeners who have never heard of eFuse, what is it and how big has it actually become today?
Yeah, so eFuse actually started off as a software company that was focused on building tournament infrastructure. So we wanted to, right at the peak of online gaming, when Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone were coming out, we were building software to basically run video game competitions for colleges, for creators, and even for some pro leagues. And over time, the business has shifted. We still do some of that, but the vast majority of what we do now is actually with a product that we call Sidekick, and it's basically in-stream advertisement. So if you're streaming on Twitch or Kick or YouTube, basically, we allow brands to advertise directly into your stream. We give a bigger cut to creators, and we allow brands to authentically show up in those ecosystems. And so we've worked with all kinds of brands, from Progressive Insurance to Cash App to Whataburger to FanDuel to Walmart. You name the Crocs, the shoe company. I mean, we've just worked with the gamut, and the business has really grown. So it's mid-8 figures in revenue now, and again, it's shifted over time. We've had to pivot a few times, but I think we've really found what's working.
So I would say that you seem obviously still kind of young. So you found success at a pretty young age through obviously a lot of hustle. But what do people assume about that that's completely wrong?
It's a lot harder and lonelier than it looks. There's times where there's really tough decisions to be made, and there's nobody to come save you. Like you gotta, when you're at the top, and I don't say that like in an egotistical way, just like at the end of the day, like some of these decisions come down to me making them. And that's a really lonely place to be, because there's not many people that have been in that position before, especially when it comes to impacting the livelihoods of people in the business, but also outside of the business. And so I would say that's, probably the thing that I didn't appreciate when I first started, is how hard it was going to be, how lonely it was going to be, and how much pressure there was going to be, and having to make some of those tough decisions.
You talk about that pressure, and you kind of referenced it earlier, but I'm curious, like as the pressure and responsibility started stacking up, where did faith sit with you in your life at the time?
Yeah, when I started eFuse, I actually wasn't a believer. I wasn't a Christian. I probably would have said that I was, but I grew up in a Catholic home, and honestly, we went to church every Saturday evening, but I don't think I ever picked up the Bible. I don't think I ever really had a relationship with God, and it wasn't until probably like the second or third year into eFuse that I started to seek out Christ for myself, and a large part it had to do with my now wife sparking this interest in me, and ultimately built this relationship with Christ myself, started going to church, started asking people in my network that I knew were Christians, just some what I perceived to be silly questions or like stupid questions, got the answers that I needed, and over time just built this real relationship with Christ, and now can confidently say He's my Lord and Savior, and it's made the journey of entrepreneurship so much easier. Not that the tasks have gotten easier, but when your perspective is focused on an eternal reward versus a worldly reward, it takes a lot of the pressure of the day to day off. And it's really meant everything to me.
Do you have a moment that you can kind of come back to that you really had that sort of intersection between, because I find myself doing the same thing. Bill and I talk about it too. Like, I think at the beginning of the podcast, I don't know if you would agree or not, Bill, like, I wasn't that religious, right? I was sort of like going through the motions, and Two Dads had seen some success. It was all great. And you're right. It can get to that level. And I sort of am coming off the back end of like working with Mr. Beast and Logan Paul. You can get this ego, man. And you get this thing like, I'm right, I'm always right. I'll be honest with you guys. Like, I bled into eFuse a little bit, thinking like, well, why aren't you running this? I tell people all the time, like, at the end of my tenure, I was almost getting toxic because I had this false ego from something that you couldn't even measure if it was all my success, some of their success, none of my success. And then I would bring it to these tournaments. And yeah, the tournaments were working with at the same time, learning about how that impacted people working with me, that I couldn't do this all alone. And I think losing that job and moving toward something else, it really gave me this sort of concept of I am all alone. I totally relate to what you're saying. And I think one of the things that it started kind of calling to me, and I'll be honest with Patrick Klein, who wrote a question in here today, like, he was very influential in that too, and sort of like, hey man, you just got to pray on it. You got to do that. I say this because at the beginning of the podcast, Bill and I we joke about it. We're like, it wasn't until we started putting back in that we started getting out. And I don't know how it works. I genuinely was skeptical. I'm like, well, of course you do this, you do this incentive, or you get this. And it's like, it was always a gimmick. It was always some cunning plan that's like, well, if we give them this and we get this. But genuinely, I think when I got divorced and we started the food truck and I was kind of all alone on that truck, and even at the beginning of the inception of this podcast, I don't know if you agree, Bill, but once we really started giving in and talking about it more and really expressing it more and not being afraid to, I think that was my big thing, was being embarrassed to talk about it, because, you know, you get people in public who are completely disagreeing with you. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you brought up God in this thing. Or, oh my, and I knew where every path went. If I chase women, what happens? If I chase drugs, I know what goes. If you chase money, you know where it goes. If you chase ego, you know where it goes. And the only thing I just couldn't wrap my brain around, no matter how smart I was where spirituality would take me. And I tell you what, being on the other side, I'm now one of the biggest advocates. Bill, do you agree with that sentiment? Where do you sit with it?
Yeah, I actually had a good question to kind of lead into Matt with that. But to answer your question first, yeah, I think at the start of the podcast, right, I think we wanted to be liked by everybody, right? We wanted to find this niche in the neighborhood and the community and say, hey, we want everybody to like it. So we said, we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to talk about that. Kind of to be more in the middle as opposed to, you know, going to one side or the other to try to appease. And then I think about like episodes 7 to 10, we kind of started unlocking and saying like, hey, this is our podcast. We're going to talk about what we want to talk about, and we're going to spotlight who we want to spotlight because we believe in them or their business or their, you know, their thought process. So we've definitely opened it. And that was going to lead into my question, which I think there's a lot of people out there that probably, I think Mitch is probably a little bit more further ahead than I am in this. You know, I've always said I'm a huge proponent of the man upstairs, but I don't necessarily proclaim a religion like, you know, Catholic or Christian or anything like that. I don't go to church, but I firmly believe in a God and a higher power. So for someone like me or Mitch, who I don't believe goes to church regularly, maybe not.
Right.
What would you tell guys like us that believe it but haven't committed to it yet? Maybe we're 2 toes in, not 2 feet in, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell guys like us for advice on our faith if that's ever kind of crossed your path in the same set?
I think everybody's relationship with God is a little bit different, and I think that was a perspective shift that I think is important for everybody to have, which is it's truly a relationship. And there's actually a verse, James 4:8, that says, draw close to God or draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. And that can look different for different people. For some people, it might be the starting point is going to church, finding a home church. For me, it was actually finding, there's a couple of pastors from my hometown who really I didn't have that great of a relationship with, but I knew that they were the pastors in our town. And so I went and met with them. I went to Mexican one night with one of them, and I just rattled off like questions that what were probably like quote unquote stupid questions but that I truly didn't know the answer. What did the Bible say about sex before marriage? What did the Bible say about drinking? Is it bad to have a drink of alcohol? Like what do these things actually mean? And that started this kind of path of curiosity. And then from there, it led me to picking up my Bible and like reading it for myself. And there's actually I can send you guys a link. I don't know if you guys have like show notes or something, but it's called the Everyday Man's Bible. And it basically it's the Bible, but it gives it from a man's interpretation of like, here's how you actually apply this passage to your life. And here's what this person who wrote it was going through when they wrote this passage. And I found that really crucial for me. It just kind of gave context to the Bible and allowed me to interpret it and then bring it into my own life. And so I know that was a lot, but what I would say is like the most important thing is start your relationship with God, and it can start in a lot of different ways. It can be going to church, it can starting there, it can be praying, it can be reading your word, it can be talking to a trusted friend, but all of those things can help you draw near to Him, and that's what I would encourage you to do.
What results have you seen as being doing this? Like what has faith genuinely helped you handle better?
I think it's given me more peace. And there were times throughout eFuse and continue to be times where like there are people that I kind of jokingly said before I got started, like there are people in the community that love me, and there's people in the community that probably don't like me. They probably never talk to me, or like maybe they still talk to me and they don't like me, but that used to really affect me. And this idea of like what other people thought of me really used to affect me. And I've gotten to this point now where I really don't care. Like I truly, whatever God thinks about me is what I care about most. And I care about certain people in my life. Like I want my wife to respect me, and my kids to respect me, my family to respect me. But if somebody that I don't have a high level of value for, and I don't say that in a mean way, but just like I'm not going to value their opinion, And so I think that that's been good. And I think also we mentioned it, but it kind of falls into what people think about you, which is the high and the low lows of. There were times when things were going so well that I got a big head, and I was arrogant. I thought it was all about me, and in reality, it was never about me. It was always about serving the kingdom. And so I think it's mellowed me out, and it's given me that kind of that comfort and knowing that nobody's opinion really matters about me except for what the Lord thinks.
I'm so proud to be on this conversation. This for those that are listening, like this is a very nice meeting for both of us, because I think at the same time we were going through, I don't think we disconnected, but we've always had a good relationship. But I think at a time when Matt was, and I was going through a divorce at the end of eFuse. I mean, I was drinking heavily and I was a liability. I'll be the hand up accountability, Bill Ray. I was a liability, but I was going through something deeply depressing. Like it was not fun. Zero relationship with God, going through a divorce, not sure where I was going to do, where I was going to live, not performing at my job and being toxic. And at the same time, these parallels of like, Matt's going through all these challenges, and it's tough for me to support him like I usually do when I can't even support myself. And it's great to hear that, man, because I think part of this, again, this podcast is for Bill and I. It's for listeners who get to be a part of it, but I'm so proud to hear that genuinely, because I think reconnecting like we always have is very special to me. I think through the podcast or through going out and getting lunch and stuff, I think it's really safe to say that God has had a plan for both of us to change and do different things. And obviously there's a reason that we're here on this podcast today, kind of not burying the hatchet. I don't think it's that level, but just embracing each other more like we used to as brothers. And I really think that's great.
Totally.
My question as a follow-up is, when did it hit you that you weren't just building something, you were responsible for other people's livelihoods? You talked about that you were a company of 100, right? What was the moment that you were like, oh shit, regardless of your ego, what was the moment where you're like, man, I really am in charge of other people's lives?
I think it wasn't until that number went the other way, if I'm being really honest, of like, it was grow. And it was awesome to be able to provide for folks and like have them be a part of the business. But then when it was like, hey, things aren't going as well as they were, and now we have to make some really tough decisions, that's when it's like, oh man, like, okay, these people have kids, they have a marriage, like they're the sole income winner. And we always had, like, and I think you can attest to this, Pickle, like we were always friends. Like we were, in a way, we were kind of like this family culture. And so when you then have to vote your family off the island because of it's the best thing to do for the business, it hurts. It hurts both sides. And I think that was when I first really began to grasp the gravity of like, and it's actually, I've changed a lot in how I approach this. I used to say that eFuse is a family, and I wouldn't say that anymore. Like eFuse is a team. And if you're a member of the team and the team's doing well, we were joking about the Steelers earlier, right? But like, if the Steelers win the Super Bowl, Mike Tomlin's still there. Aaron Rodgers, maybe he probably hangs him up anyway. But like people stay around, and it's like if the team wins, people stay and people keep jobs. If the team doesn't perform, like people get voted off, myself included. And I think that's a really important perspective change that I've had. But it doesn't take away the gravity of like those tough decisions at the same time, knowing that they're real people with real lives on the other end of those decisions.
Yeah, I think that's that hits home for me right now because 2 companies ago I was a plant manager of a manufacturing facility, and we have this group chat, me and 3 other guys, right? And I left, went on to different ventures, right? And another guy went and started his own business, which was really cool. And then 2 of our close friends within the last 3 months had been let go due to layoffs and restructuring. And it was like, man, I'm glad I'm not there having to deliver that message to these 2 friends of mine, right? So not to make light of them losing their jobs, but like having those conversations would have been very difficult. And I have no issue ever letting someone go or terminating them due to performance or, other related items. It's when you're letting go key players because of company performance. And you're right, when you're at the top, not from an ego standpoint, but from a responsibility and a decision-making tree, you got to cut somebody, right? Otherwise, the business can't succeed, and now everybody's out of a job. So it's not an easy conversation, and I like the way you phrase it as a team because I think a lot of people, especially around this episode, will relate to team, right? The quarterback doesn't play well, the quarterback gets benched, right? If he doesn't figure it out, he gets cut. Now he doesn't have a job. Now he needs to kind of refine a new home and a new team to work with, right? So that's really good.
Can I ask you guys a question real quick? Because it's coming.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you guys so much. Just a straight no. No, you cannot. Okay. The hosting duties are Bill Ray and Matt Benson. I'm going to take a step away. But, one of the things that comes to mind, and I'm even working on it, like I'm working on it with real time because I'm in close proximity on a food truck with people. I'm not just go back to your desk or I'm in CES, or I'm at this event and you're here doing things. I'm right next to them. And I'm also having to train them in a way too, like with Berkey and Rich and Allison and all these, and Rob, and we have Kevin coming down who's going to help us now too. What can you guys say? I'll toss it to Matt first because I think what comes to mind is I've used this sentence and I'm still continually learning it, but it's not personal. It's just business. When I say that to you, Matt, like what comes to mind? Because I'm going through it currently. Any advice for, that subject or that sentence? I mean, it feels like that we're towing the line here, but how have you had to make decisions that aren't personal, that are sort of just business? I think Bill alluded to it, but I want to hear it from Matt too.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would probably rephrase that sentence to some extent. I would say that business is personal, but you have to trust that what I'm doing, you have to trust my heart and you have to trust why I'm doing it. And you might not, and that might be why you end up leaving the business, right? But you have to trust that I'm giving you this feedback because I care about you and I care about the business succeeding. And it's not my ego, it's not me wanting to achieve X, Y, Z. It's truly because I want us to win. And I think if people believe that, they'll be open to the feedback. But I think if they don't, if they think it is just an ego trip and you want to get something for yourself, and that's when they kind of turn off. So I actually do think it's personal in the sense that they're real people, they're real relationships. I mean, you and I are friends, Mitch. We've had a lot of awesome conversations, a lot of tough conversations, both ways, right? And I think the reason we're having this fun conversation now is like we both know that we love each other and respect each other. You could cuss me out, and I would maybe be a little upset for a second, but then I'd come back and be like, oh, maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't mess that up, But there's a love and respect layer there that I think is really important for any feedback.
I think I'm working on that right now, buddy. I mean, Berkey said it to me. He's one of our guys. He's a great employee at the Two Dads, and we love him. But I asked Rich and Berkey, I said, hey, I want to install these new fryers, and I want to do these things to optimize the workplace. And I got a text back fired across the bow from Berkey, and it was fair. I didn't take it personally. He just goes, are you actually going to listen to us, or are you just going to do whatever you want anyway? And I felt like, one, maybe in the past I haven't done as good of a job at being transparent as a leader of why I'm making these decisions. But I think it's also totally fair. It's like I'm stuck in this caveat between I still got to do what I got to do because it's my money on the line, right? And I got to make that tough call. But at the same time, I do have to involve my team more. I have to involve them in the why. Even if we don't go with their decision, I didn't do as good of a job in the past of saying, okay, we're not going to go with that, but here's why. I just didn't do it. So I think that was a wake-up call for me, Bill. I think just hearing that from the staff is like, it was a big deal.
I don't think Berkey's ever one shy to tell you how it is, which is a good thing.
No.
But I will die on the hill that you need guys like Berkey that call a spade a spade. Now they do it with good intentions and they don't do it in a degrading way. Like the way he said that was very respectful, but also very blunt to say like, hey, look, like I've given you suggestions in the past and you just blow them off because like you're head cheese, right? I think one thing that you've done a great job from, I didn't see a season 1 in the truck, but season 2 from the start to the end, you progressed a lot. And I'm intrigued to see like where that goes this year with me stepping out and how you can handle that. I'll still be here for a phone call for you to vent and things like that and say, hey, how would you do this or this or this? And we can do that. But I think, when I learned to empower coworkers and employees, I became twice the leader, right? Like when I genuinely did trust the team and you didn't hoard that power and I say, here, Mitch, I need you to start doing these responsibilities, but then I chastise you when you don't do them correctly instead of saying like, hey, here's how I do things. This is how it needs done. You can put your own twist on it, but I still need these results, right? Like I can build you a sales script and you can say you can do a better one. But if you don't deliver, I need you to come back to my sales script because my sales script does work. So kind of like giving them a little creative control as long as they're still delivering results is usually a pretty good way to deliver it, at least in my past.
What's the most important leadership lesson that you learned the hard way, Matt? I'm trying to stem in off that with what Bill said. I mean, I gave you something that I kind of didn't do as good of a job. I didn't have such hard lessons, but is there anything that you reference that you learned the hard way that you didn't get from a book or one of the mentors like Bill Baumel?
I think I'm still learning this, but there's a level of handoff that is required for a business to scale. And when you go 0 to 1, you're in everything. You're in the weeds. You're in every facet of the business. And then as you go 1 to 10, naturally you're a little bit further removed. 100 or 10 to 100 as the business scales, you continually have to remove yourself. But what is required in that situation is, especially if it's something you care about, there is this need to train and then hand off and then trust and allow them to go and execute and then coach accountability versus like trying to coach every single play. And so I think that that's been something that I've had to learn, and I didn't do good for probably a good 2 years. I was still in the weeds or like still trying to handhold every decision and having to let go of some of that authority and trust people, especially those that have expertise in a specific area. I think it's really important. I think like, I know we keep bringing it back to you and me, Mitch, but like even on the event side, like for a while, I wanted to be very involved in every tournament that we did. And then over time, like you had great ideas and could go and build a proposal and like run an event without me having to be involved at all, And like that was something where trust was developed and then able to execute. But that took me a while to do it. I'm still trying to do that across the board.
Well, I want to switch gears over to the documentary side. I think people listening, we've had a great conversation on faith. We've had a great conversation on business and eFuse, but I've got a fun one because I like to break it up a little bit before we get to the documentary side. Matthew Benson and Bill Ray, you know what this is. It's time for our first mini game. This one right now is called, What's Up, Doc? Before we go deep into the Redemption docuseries and how you build a documentary from scratch, I want to warm this up with a quick game. Because we've got a documentary creator in the house and we need to test his instincts. This one's called What's Up, Doc? I'm going to read you a documentary description. You tell me if it's real or if it's completely made up. First instincts only, Matt. Bill Ray, you're going to play alongside of us too, if that's okay with you. We'll go back and forth, but I'm going to read a documentary title, its description, and your guys' job back and forth is to tell me if it's real or fake. Are you interested in playing the mini game, Matt Benson?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. First title. I'll start with you, Bill Ray, then I'll go to Matt Benson, okay? Free solo. A climber attempts to scale El Capitan with no ropes, knowing one mistake means death. Is it real or fake? Bill Ray.
Real.
That one's real. Congratulations. Well done. There we go. We love that, Bill Ray. Well done. Okay, as I get my buttons figured out here we go. Matt Benson on the clock. Jiro dreams of sushi A sushi master dedicates his life to one craft, even at the cost of relationships with friends and family. Is that real or fake?
I think I'm going to go real.
Congratulations, Matt Benson. That was real. Very nicely done. Back to Bill Ray over here. You both are 1 for 1. The Dawn Wall. A documentary about the production of Dawn dish soap following a factory worker who's been secretly perfecting the formula and accidentally goes on a date with the CEO while testing it. Is it real or fake?
I got to go fake because if that's real, that's a heck of a story.
That's correct. I made that one up today in the bathroom. That was fake. This one goes over to Matt Benson. This one's called Second Dates, a documentary about two people who share the same body and have to agree on who they're dating while dealing with jealousy, breakups, and therapy. Is it real or fake, Matthew Benson?
Got to be fake.
That one is fake. Good job. That would be a wild documentary if that was well done. 2 for 2 for both of you guys. He's already proven to me, Bill Ray, that he's in the documentary series. This one goes back to you, Bill. Hoop Dreams, a documentary following two young kids over several years as they chase NBA dreams, revealing the immense pressure, money, family expectations, and the promise of success slowly shapes and sometimes distorts their childhoods. Is it real or fake? Hoop Dreams.
I'm going to say it's real because back in the day, I used to watch Sebastian Telfair's documentary. It sounds very similar, even though it's not, but I'm going to go real.
You guys are storming it. I hope you all at home are playing along and enjoying this. Good job. We're going to go back to Matt Benson. This one's called Sunday Noise, a documentary about a megachurch worship team navigating faith, burnout, and ego while treating Sunday services like live productions, complete with rehearsals, lighting debates, emotional analytics, and quiet rivalries over who will lead the most powerful moment. Is it real or fake?
Yeah, I think it's fake.
That one is fake. Wow, you guys are storming it right now. I cannot believe how good you guys are doing. This is very impressive. I hope everyone at home is doing just as well. The next one is called Searching for Sugar Man, Bill. This one is about a failed U.S. musician who unknowingly becomes a global icon overseas. Is it real or fake?
Sugar Man just throws me off. I'm going fake.
That one is real. Our first loss, and Matt Benson just to take home the crown. This one's called Drafted and Crafted, following the life of an athlete who faces the 48 hours where a lifelong dream officially ends and a new dream begins using Kraft mac and cheese to make successful art. Is it real or fake?
I'm going to go fake. Please tell me that's fake.
All right, Matt Benson, you've won the game show. Congratulations, my friend. That was the mini game called Meow, What's Up, Doc? Congrats, Matt. How do you feel? Do you feel pretty good about winning that?
That's got my blood pumping. I'm excited. Let's go again.
That's good. I mean, you clearly know documentaries.
We'll get him like a championship shirt.
We'll get him a title.
Get some hot sauce or what?
It's a round of golf with me, you, Pickle, and Foosh Cheatham this summer in Columbus.
Let's go. That's good. I find the thing. There we go. Hey. Hey, podcast listeners, before you skip ahead, please take a listen to this. On February 7th, Two Dads are hosting their first ever live event, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. It's called the Battle Bash, and we built it as a way to give back to the community, this time supporting Skylar Mullenkamp and her family. Things will kick off at 11 a.m. at Caddy's Golf Lounge with Battle Golf, a live Two Dads podcast, prizes, drink specials, and music by Isaac Busher. If you've been enjoying the podcast and want to support what we're building, this is the perfect way. Come hang out, have a good time, and if you feel like participating, teams are $60 and spots are limited. You can sign up right now at caddiesgolflounge.com.
Yeah, so we've talked religion a little bit. We've talked about, you a little bit, eFuse, and then we're going to kind of lean into the docu-series that you kind of had and put out there about the Ohio State Buckeyes and faith and everything else, and us running it up and winning a national championship, right? So a lot of Buckeye faithful that listen to this, and for the ones that root for Notre Dame or Michigan, you can tune out if you don't enjoy it too much. So
here's to you.
But for people hearing about it for the first time, meaning the docu-series, what is redemption, and what story are you actually trying to tell behind the Ohio State football team throughout the series?
Yeah, so it's a 3-part docuseries available on Prime Video. We set out to tell a story really about 3 guys. We wanted to focus on Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, G. Scott, and we wanted to follow them throughout the entirety of the 2024 season. Obviously, the season unfolded the way that it did, had the highs and lows, losing to Oregon, losing to Michigan, going on the hardest, toughest playoff run in the history of college football, ultimately to be crowned the national champion. And most people would look at that and think that it's a football film, but the reality is it's much deeper than that. This is a film about how, despite the highs and lows of a season, despite the trials and tribulations of playing football at that level, really how Jesus Christ can radically change somebody's life and ultimately change the guys within that locker room, and how that's really the prize and the redemption is what Jesus did on the cross for them, and that was the redemption of their life, not necessarily the redemption for the season.
Why couldn't this just be a football documentary? Like, what changed it about you when you were making it?
I don't think that you could tell the full story without telling how Jesus impacted these guys' lives. I mean, it's one thing to finish a game and to get up there and say, like, thank you, Jesus Christ, for this win, or like, thank you, God, for my Lord and Savior for giving us this opportunity. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but there's a lot of people that do that. But when you get up close and personal with G and Trey and Emeka and many others on the team, it truly it means something to them. It's deeper than just somebody getting on the mic and saying that. You can tell, like, God truly transformed their lives. And as we got deeper in the interviews and we saw and heard about who these guys were before they knew Jesus, I don't mean this meanly, but they weren't great guys. I mean, they were doing a lot of the things we perceive players with money are doing, and it just was really cool to see how they changed. And so I think all that to be said, you couldn't have fully told this story unless you told that part of it too.
Were you boots on the ground there? I didn't mean to cut you off, Bill. Were you boots on the ground for all these interviews too? Like, how much involvement did you have? Yeah,
Marley and I pretty much did every interview. We were not the brains behind the technical pieces of like the video audio. We had folks that handled all that and did it brilliantly, and like we could have told the story as well as we did without that. But we were boots on the ground, meeting and connecting a lot of the talent to the film.
Who was, if there was a catalyst to this, right? I know we talked about Jim Tressel earlier back in the 02-03 times, where I think Tressel kind of brought that to the program. Was there a catalyst? I mean, I know obviously, G, Emeka, and Travion were big pieces of that, but did one kind of push the agenda? Because I think in a locker room of that size, someone's got to step up eventually and make that decision and say, hey, I think this is good for the brotherhood. And I know they talked about that throughout the season. Was there one individual or maybe a couple that kind of catalysted, or were it those three that I talked about?
I'll give you two answers. I'll say that those three were really the push for that team. But even prior to them, there were two guys. I don't know if you remember these guys. Master Teague III, who was a running back for Ohio State, and then there was Cam Babb, who was a wide receiver for Ohio State. In my opinion, those two were the catalysts that really – there's been believers inside of the football team before, but there's never really been a total adoption like there was in the 24 season, and it sparks with Cam Babb and Master Teague and their testimonies, which are partially touched on in Redemption. But I will also say that for that team – I would say that G. Scott he's not the most well-known. Like Trey and Emeka are probably more well-known than him. But he is the guy that everybody looks to when it comes to the team and their faith. And there's actually a moment after the Michigan loss where they're in a players-only meeting, and they say it. Like, guys are cussing at guys. They're pointing fingers. They're yelling at Coach Day. They're yelling at each other. Like, it's a very verbally violent room. And they actually say in the documentary, if you were in that room, you probably wouldn't think we didn't like each other, but we were in that room because we did, because we loved each other, and because we were brothers. And after all of that is said and done, G actually gets up and says, hey, I want to pray us out. And they all lock arms in the Woody in the film room. G prays, and they dedicate the rest of the season, which at this point in time, they don't know what the rest of the season is going to look like. They don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs. But they decided to dedicate the rest of the season to the Lord and the playoff run to the Lord. And I'm not saying because they did that, that's why they won, but it's pretty cool to look back and say, man, that's a powerful statement when you're at your lowest to still dedicate whatever's to come to God, and then to see what transpired. I think it's truly only a story that the Lord could have written.
And then I think the first play of the Rose Bowl goes to Mr. Scott there on a pretty good wheel route, on a tight end wheel route, if I remember right. Because I jokingly remember I was going to bet G-Scott for over his yards. And it was the first play of the game.
These guys are arm in arm at the Michigan talking about how special it is, and you're talking about the FanDuel bet.
Hey, man, it was true, though, but I remember that play. But no, I did. I got chills right there kind of thinking about what that takes for, 100-plus grown men that are probably all in different parts of their life from different areas with different, ethnic backgrounds to kind of formulate to do that. I think everybody understands how hard it is to get that many people on the same page and truthfully buy in and believe that.
How did you get them to be comfortable? I feel like this is a very vulnerable subject. Like how did you and your wife get these players where they felt safe being real on camera? Because it's a tough thing to talk about the same way we talked about with the podcast.
The hardest part wasn't when we got them on camera. It was getting them to be on camera. And I think that this is a testament to them, but they did not want this to be about them. They were adamant that they did not want somebody, frankly, to take this story, which in their mind is about Jesus, and use it to monetize or to make some worldly claim or make it about Ohio State football. They were very aware what this story could be, and they wanted to have control, and then they wanted to trust the partner. And we didn't know them prior. I mean, we just reached out because we were in that service. And I mean, think about how many DMs they get, especially after these bad games, right? They're getting all these crazy messages. So it took a lot of, we were on hours, tens of hours of calls with them, just pitching and getting comfortable and getting to know each other, praying together, talking through it. And eventually they gain enough trust. And then each of those interviews was probably 2 to 3 hours. But when we sat them down, there was no breaking down. They wore their heart on their sleeve, and there wasn't much that we had to do. They were just really honest and vulnerable from the get.
That's crazy, man. I can't even imagine. I know how hard it was to get a hold of influencers or just DM someone to be in an eFuse tournament. It's a very cumbersome process, and usually you have to go through 50 hurdles or an agent or somebody that wants a cut or something. There's a lot of ways that this could have derailed. I mean, really. I don't think people listening understand the gravity of how difficult it is to get a hold of somebody that is receiving tons of DMs. I used to have to be creative with subject lines. How I landed Mr. Beast, I wrote, I would have a beer with Mr. Beast. And he was like, yo, man, I don't even drink beer. And I was like, all right, here we go. Now we get the hook. You know what I mean? And so, the question I think about that is you talk about the emotions that comes from these guys. Was there ever an emotional for you and Marley as you got in this, really close-knit zone with these guys? Did you get emotional? I mean, Bill, you talked about how you just got goosebumps, but we weren't even in the room when we feel that. Is there any moments you look back and say, wow, that really touched my heart?
Yeah, I think there are definitely moments throughout. Here's a crazy story. Marley would tell this better, but we were finishing up filming in early March, and obviously the guys, during the season, we weren't able to get a ton of time with them because they're playing, right? And so the day that we're filming Travion, Marley gets a call right before the interview starts, and so she steps out. She gets this call. It's her OBGYN, and her OBGYN is like, hey, we've waited long enough. We need to induce you tomorrow. She's 9 months pregnant at this point. She's like, we have to induce you tomorrow. There's no option. You need to come in. She then walks in, doesn't tell me. We conduct the whole Travion interview. The next day, or later after the Travion interview, she's like, hey, I got to tell you something. We're having our baby tomorrow. We go to the hospital the next day. We're there the whole day. And then the day after, so I guess 24 hours later, after we had Lily, our baby girl, I leave and I go do the interview with G. Scott because that's the only time he can do it before he heads to training camp. And so that's just a little bit of our life situation through that. But it was just cool to see all the different intertwinings of people and relationships and just moments where it's hey, there's no way this is going to happen, to oh man, this is actually happening. And we were just really fortunate to have a lot of good people that believed, and ultimately it came together.
So you're a CEO, not a filmmaker, right, by trade. What was the exact moment, though, that pushed you from the idea of this docuseries, right, reaching out to some of these guys to, we're actually doing this? Was it that first sit-down interview? Was it the first guy to reply back? What was kind of that catalyst for you?
I'm a big believer in just you have to create momentum. And so honestly, and in retrospect, I might have done it differently, but I called investors, filmmakers, and like Ohio State before I even had a conversation with the guys and said, hey, this is something I want to do. Can we put the resources together to make it happen? And then once we got some of the resources, that's when we went to them and said, hey, we've got everything ready to go. Like, all we need is you. And then it was 6 months of getting them bought in a good way. And then eventually them coming on board. So I don't think that there was like a moment in time. I can be obsessive once I get something that's stuck in my head, and I just couldn't get it out. I was just like, I think this would be a great film. I would love to watch it. Like I think it'd be a phenomenal film. And then watching and kind of riding the roller coaster of the season, I'd be lying to you if I said that like when they lost to Michigan, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, like we don't have a film. Like this thing's over. Like what are we gonna do?
No one's gonna want to watch this.
Nobody's gonna want to watch this. And then ultimately that ends up becoming such a crucial part of the film where they ultimately end on the highest high, right? So there wasn't like a specific moment, but there was a lot of little moments along the way where it's like, okay, this could be great, or oh man, this sucks. It's kind of like building a company, I suppose.
How do you decide what to keep in? Like, I mean, you talk about all these little moments, these big moments, these moments of that you have to kind of like fly by the seat of your pants. Was editing it tough? How did the editing process happen, and like, how did you decide what stayed in the film?
So it was quite the process. We had two great editors. One used to be a wrestler at Ohio State named Sal Marandino, and then Brandon Moragan, who actually is an editor at One Church, were the two main editors on the film. There was over 90 hours of interview footage, then all the game footage, which is probably another 30 or 40 hours, and then there was all the archival. And so you can think about, okay, we have to call it 150 hours of footage, and that's just like one camera. Then you multiply that times 3. So we have to take 450 hours of camera footage and consolidate it down to 2 hours. And so that is a daunting thing in and of itself. But what we did is we ended up like basically mapping the story, and then based off of what we knew to be true and like following it for the season. And then we found the footage to kind of fit in. And then we reviewed it with the guys probably like 3 or 4 times, where they would just come over to the house, we'd play it and be like, okay, what is this right? Is this wrong? Like, what are we missing? And then from that process, we were able to whittle it down to 2 hours. And then the other aspect of it, which we haven't touched on much, which is this isn't an official Ohio State documentary. This is like,
yeah, I was just going to ask that. I'm like, did you have to get Ohio State's approval?
Dude, what a bear. Very difficult.
We've been sued by them a few times, Brandon and myself. If you don't, they're pretty protective of rights. I'll just say that.
They have a big legal team to make sure that they're protected.
Even the entire Benson family might struggle going against Ohio State. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a challenge. And then like, listen, this is crazy. I don't even know if I'm supposed to disclose this, but like for 1 second,
we won't tell anybody.
I know. Yeah. Nobody tell if you're listening. For 1 second of game footage to license that is $300. 1 second. So multiply that out for an hour. And then it's like, okay, if we use an hour of game footage, that's a lot of money. And so there's like this challenge.
Is that a one-time? Is that a one-time like payment fee, or is there like residuals based off how it performs, or is it just a flat fee?
It's one-time fee, but it's $300. Well, there's different levels of licensing. So like that's for like just the US. And then if you want to get worldwide, it's like $350. And if you want it to be live stream versus like theater, like there's different level of licenses there. So the price adds up very quickly. And then you also have to balance the legality of who owns the footage and getting approval. And so that was probably the most complex part, is like, how do we make sure that we're compliant, we tell the right story, and we don't break the budget, because our budget's not a multi-million-dollar budget, you know?
How did you get that done?
I did the math on an hour worth of game film. So that is a large number. I think everybody can do the math if they did it themselves.
Did you get a discount or anything? I mean, like, you're an amateur filmmaker. It's your first. Oh, you went in there. So did you fundraise for this?
Yeah, and to be fair, we didn't. If you watch, like, there's not an hour worth of game footage. It's probably, I want to say, like 25 minutes of game footage. It feels like a lot more, but
just enough game footage.
It's still expensive. So, but yeah, we fundraised. Like there was a lot of pieces to it. But it was, it was extremely challenging. And honestly, if I knew what it took when we started, I don't know that I would have done it. Because it's so daunting. There's a lot.
Ignorance is bliss.
Fact.
So if somebody, I guess my next question I just thought of, like, everybody says like, oh, I want to make a documentary about that. Maybe we'll make a Two Dads. Brandon and I have toyed with the idea of making the merch machine because I do think that the run Brandon and I went on during those influencers and making merch and just starting with nothing from a t-shirt store all the way up to this. So if any producers are listening or your friend, that you play rec league basketball with, we've got a great story over here. I guess my question is, if a normal person with a 9-to-5 wanted to start a documentary this year, what's the first step you'd tell them to do this weekend? Find some money or what?
I think it depends on it depends on who owns, like, what's the film. I mean, it sounds basic, like, what's the film and who owns the footage? Because, like, if we didn't have to pay for the game footage, our budget it's still a lot of money, but it's not that much. And you could, if you're an editor, you could do it yourself, right? So I really think it really just comes down to, like, how fast, what's the content, and who's a part of it. And that'll dictate a lot of the cost a lot of the time. But yeah, send me the merch machine or merch man. What'd you call it?
Either one.
I like the merch machine.
I like the merch machine. Brandon's always called it that secretly, that the merch machine, to tell the story of little viral.
I actually think that's a sick idea. I'm looking for my next thing.
Dude, it was the pioneering of a sub. Just not to derail this thing, but like, if you think about it, I'm not here to pitch my documentary, but Brandon's got a good point. T-shirt store, middle of Short North, competing with Homage, flirting the line with illegal use of logos and different creative assets that sort of look like Ohio State, but just enough that we've received multiple cease and desist, and I mean multiple. We start flirting around with this and going viral. We meet Roman Atwood, who introduced us to Logan Paul, and then Logan Paul, we give him free gear. He starts wearing it on Logan Paul vlogs, and then we ask Logan Paul, why are you wearing our gear, Lamp Apparel? If you go back and look, he goes, I don't know, it's comfortable, I like it. I said, why don't we make you your gear? And it took about a year of litigation and talks, and then Maverick was born. And then once we had Maverick, we went from literally probably a $200,000 little t-shirt store, and after all the revenue and paying Joey and Brandon and Elena and everybody involved, made, 20, 30,000, just enough, right? To then 33 million in literally a year. So go from this little spot of production, not being able to afford your inventory, going to the guy that makes Justice, getting the loan, getting that going, then producing on a whim, hitting 33 million. That doesn't even get into Logan Paul filmed some not so good stuff in Japan, dropped off. So he went from $33 million business to like 10. Like, dude, it is a crazy ride. Then you have Mr. Beast and all these TikTokers. Like, there is a really good story there to talk about. And then Amazon comes in and just boom, they can offer higher margins. They can offer and buy higher leverage with their capital. More, I don't know. I don't want to go on a tangent, but that's a really, we might have something there for documentary number 2, my friend. Another Matt Benson production.
I'll have my people get a hold of your people.
Yeah,
Matt,
that's right.
I'll spearhead this.
I'll answer your DMs this time, Matt. No problem.
If someone watches Redemption and isn't an Ohio State person or a person of faith, what do you still hope lands for them after watching the docuseries?
I would say that no matter your life circumstances, you're going to see a lot of different circumstances that folks come from in this film. Folks that have lost loved ones unexpectedly, folks that dealt with addiction, folks that struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts, and to see what they came from to what they became, you'll find a couple things to be true. You'll find that they, first and foremost, like, found God and sought Him out and ultimately built a relationship. You'll find that they found brotherhood and folks that they were able to lean on and have really transparent, authentic conversations with. And then I think thirdly, you'll find that even at the highest peak, there's still a lot that is left on the table. It's not all fulfilling. Winning a national championship, making as much money as they've made isn't the most fulfilling thing in the world. It's finding true happiness and true contentment, and they've been able to do that through their faith. So I would hope that you would see that no matter the circumstance you're in, there's always a better tomorrow, but also realize that if you're at the peak of what you perceive to be the worldly peak, there's also something better for you, and that's Jesus Christ. And it requires a first step, and after that first step, the rest will take care of itself.
Last question for me. You look back now, everything you've learned, weren't sure if you'd do the documentary over again. What does redemption mean to you personally?
I know I said it already, but I think that redemption truly is like the redemptive nature of like accepting God as your Savior. And I think nothing else really matters. If you're willing to accept that, no matter the circumstance you come from, the situation you're in, like your life can be redeemed. It was redeemed for what he did on the cross, and that's been true for me. And I don't know that I could have articulated it that way until like going through this process of building out the film. But it's just as much as it hopefully works on other people, it's definitely worked on me. And so it's been an awesome process. We've met some incredible people, and I appreciate you guys having me on to share a little bit about it.
Who would have thought walking into that church on Sunday, what would have transpired after meeting G, huh?
Fact.
Well, I've got a little game show before we go. We end every game show or every show with a game show. Matt Benson, I know you come from a family of attorneys. Are you interested in playing? Do you have your paperwork together? Are you interested in playing the final game show?
Yes, I am.
Okay, excellent. We'll send it to Michael later. We'll get all our paperwork in order. That's his brother, for those listening. Here we go. One last one before we go. This one's called CEO for a Day. Before we let you go, and with every episode, we end with a game. You're running the company for 24 hours, no meetings, no explanations, just instincts. This is a this or that. I'm going to list two things really quickly, and you're going to hit me with one or the other, okay?
Gotcha.
Time on the clock, Bill Ray, 30 seconds.
Gotcha.
Here we go. Inbox at 0 or production is done?
Production done.
Board meetings or team one-on-ones?
Team one-on-ones.
Early workout or late night grind?
Late night grind.
Big risky bet or small guaranteed win?
I'm a big risky bet guy, for better or worse.
Delegate it or do it yourself once?
I have to say delegate after my earlier answer.
Vision deck or execution checklist?
Execution.
Hard conversation today or easy win now?
Easy win.
Phone on silent or always reachable?
Phone on silent, for sure.
Production or probably protect culture or protect speed?
Protect speed.
And last one, faith first decision or data first
Gotta
decision?
say faith first, baby.
Faith first, baby. That was a great episode. Matt Benson, thank you again for coming on the Two Dads podcast. Bill Ray, anything to say before we go?
No, I would tell everybody out there that go check it out on Amazon, and you will really like the product once you finish it. It was very well done, and it was an honor to have you, especially here in Buckeye Land. So thanks for all the work.
Matt Benson, tell people where they can see the show and anything you got to say before we go.
Prime Video, search Redemption. Check it out. And then, yeah, I appreciate y'all having me. This was awesome. Two Dads Pod is the truth. Appreciate it.
You're the man. We'll see you next week for episode 50. Until then, take care.